Do you think non-photographers notice the change in light in the angle of the sun as much as photographers do?
I don't think so. I don't think that's really a thing.
Yeah, that's my thought as well. I mean, certainly more toward the extremes, yeah, but there's this moment when things start shifting noticeably so. And I don't know, maybe it's because I love fall so much that I just start getting a little bit excited as, as those light angles change a little bit and get a little more light inside the house from some of the south-facing windows. And it gets me excited about, heading to Zion in the fall. And then also I've got the camping trip early next month with my wife. We're going to take Oliver, our dog, along, which will be interesting.
That's always fun.
But yeah, I think it'll go well. But needless to say, all of that is on my mind, thinking about the trip design, thinking about things I need to get and everything like that. I had this print order that came in the other day, and so I use Squarespace as my web host and for all the e-commerce stuff. I got the email saying, a new order arrived, and oftentimes it's for a zine or a print portfolio, and I looked at it, I'm like, ooh, it's for a print. This is pretty cool. And so they show a thumbnail of the image, and it says the name of the image, the size. I'm like, oh, cool, it's a 16 by 20, and I knew immediately which photo it was based on, the just glancing at the name and seeing the thumbnail and stuff. And it's always nice when it is a print that has already been drum scanned. Yeah. And I've fine-tuned it for print because I know the process is going to go pretty smoothly. But I'm telling the story, so,
Yeah, that's true.
we know where this is maybe going here. But even so, even with everything already set in stone, it's very difficult for me to produce the print in one shot. Something goes wrong. It's almost always the case. And the paper is expensive. It takes time to make and everything. And so I load a roll of the Hahnemühle Photoreg Baryta paper in my printer. I size the image down to 16 by 20. I choose all the settings. I print it. Print turns out perfect. I'm like, yes. Okay, we're going great here. Next up, signing the print.
Oh, God.
So
this is why I don't sign my prints, because I can tell where this is going, or at least I think so right now. Yeah, and this is why I don't sign my prints in the front. Everything's in the back. There's a lot
of pressure.
Yeah, exactly. It's too much pressure for me, and I just, So go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And also, if you're signing on the back with pencil, there are erasers.
Exactly.
But signing on the front with a more glossy type paper, we don't have the luxury of signing with pencils. So I look up what print number it's going to be. So I'm like, all right, so this is number 6 of 100. And I have a little scrap of the same paper I printed on where I did a nozzle test. So I take the pen and I kind of scribble on it because I know I need to get a little ink flowing from it, so it's going to go nice and smooth. I use the Micron Pigma O2 pen, which is really, really good for this sort of stuff. I do a test signature on that nozzle test chart. Everything looking good. And then the moment of truth where I go down, I sign it, right? And my signature is horrible. It's just like the ink stops flowing at just the wrong time that starts again. I'm like, all right, so it's just the top of the B. I can go in there and I can just go over the top of it. I have a second at chances. I do that. It looks worse. I'm like, I can't do this. So I tear it up and I go back to the printer. I print another copy and I go through the same process of, and the other thing I didn't mention is I also have to go through and decurl the paper. Mm-hmm. So I reverse roll it in a yoga mat, which makes it nice and flat. And then, pull out the pen, I sign it, it's perfect. So I'm really happy about that. Next up is to go and I spray it with the Hahnemühle protective spray, which gives a nice even finish to it. It protects it against UV even more so. So I go out to the garage, lay out some paper, get the spray going, spray it, and then you wait and you spray it, 90 degrees. And then, you let it sit for a while. Everything turns out great. So I come and I bring it back into the house, bring it to my office. I'm looking at this perfect print. I'm like, oh man, this is great. Only 2 tries this time. That's not bad. Then I always like to double check things just to make sure that everything's fine. So I go back to the order and I realize I printed the wrong photo. It's a photo that has a very similar name to it. It's a photo that looks very similar, but I completely printed the wrong photo.
That's great.
So, but thankfully that other photo is one that I have also had drum scanned. I've also fine-tuned it. It's actually one that's hanging on my wall in my living room. So I'm like, all right, so let's do this. So I go ahead and I print that photo, and then I go ahead and sign it and seal it. Everything turns out great. I pack it up. I mail it off. But I'm left with this other print that turned out perfect. It's got the number. It's got the signature on it. And I started with this idea that rather than, I can't really store it long term because I don't really have, it's a 16 by 20 print. It's on like 20 by 24 size paper. It's a hard thing to store flat. And so I'm thinking maybe this is a sign that I should take that print and just say that, this print is ready to go. It's already signed. It's already packed for shipping, and just do some sort of like flash sale sort of thing, just put it out there for a little bit less, just to avoid the waste of tearing up. Because at some point someone's going to order that print. But the reason I mention all of this is that, sometimes those mistakes that we make, they lead us down a different path that sometimes gives, different ideas on how to do things. So I started thinking maybe occasionally I'll print out one of the images that's a good seller, just put it out there, just one at this price. And I wouldn't imagine, I would imagine it'd probably sell pretty well, but I don't know. Just one of those things.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing something like that. Especially because you're not doing it it's not as, gross as doing like true flash sales for everything at once. It's more of like, here's an opportunity to get something that only one person can take advantage of this opportunity. It's I don't know.
Because maybe there's someone who's sitting on the fence or like, I've always liked that image. It's one, and here is an opportunity. I don't have to wait for it. It'll just be, dropped in the mail today.
Yeah.
So just one other thing of maybe I'll add that where every now and then I'll choose one of my favorite images and just put it out there, see what happens. I think that's how I don't know, some degree of progress, some degree of change can happen, just one little thing at a time. And I haven't seen really any other photographers I'm aware of doing that. So I don't know, maybe that'll be a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see, but just something I stumbled upon.
Yeah. And the other thing that, while I'm thinking about flash sales and all of that, it's not like this is going to be like a regular thing in sense of people can't predict, it's right around Black Friday, so he's guaranteed to have a sale. Because I think that's the issue. Right. It cheapens things, and people start to I'm on the fence of buying a print, but I know that he does these sales every year at these intervals. I'm just going to wait, When you do flash sales like that, it just, eventually people aren't willing to spend the money that you were asking for during the rest of the year. And so really there's no reason to even have your prices outside of that flash sale or higher than it, because people just aren't going to buy it.
In 2020, during the midst of the pandemic, I did a print sale, which actually did very, very well. But you also figure that is going to, cannibalize a lot of the people that are sitting on the fence that maybe were willing to pay full price, but then once they, buy something for a big discount, they're set, and so it cuts into your long-term sales just for a quick little gain. But I did that. I was doing that every other year. So I did that in 2020. I did it in 2022. I decided not to do it this year, just because I don't know. I feel like there's more creative ways of doing things, whether it's this thing that I've just stumbled upon or whether there's something else I haven't thought of yet. But there's got to be more creative ways versus just, saying, here's a big discount because, I don't know, something about discounted art. It just feels weird. It feels wrong.
Especially because people already, and speaking in a very broad sense here, but people already don't value art. Like, if you look at most people's homes, a lot of people don't have actual art from working artists hanging in their walls.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the cheap stuff that you buy from retail stores that it matches the decor a little bit, at least. It's
furniture art.
Exactly. Yeah. So I definitely think that doing flash sales is, like you said, there are better ways, more tasteful ways of doing it. And I think this is one where, like you said, it's not something that you do all the time. It's more of like, oops, I somehow messed up and printed the wrong photograph and caught it right before I was shipping it off kind of deal.
Yeah. There's some degree of impulse, motivating it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. But we'll see on that. So what are you up to? Anything new with you? Anything on the job front? Anything along those lines?
Job front is pretty much the same. So by the time that this episode is released, I will have started the job, I think.
Nice.
At this point. So obviously right now I can't speak for it, but I officially start on the 23rd of this month of September. And so right after I get back from Yellowstone. So then I have a little bit of a break, or I have 3 weeks of working before I go to Acadia and kind of reflect on everything. But
you're going to have some very busy times ahead.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah. You're traveling, then come back, start the job, and then
travel again,
another traveling. So it'll definitely, just like you said, it'll give you that opportunity to, think about the experience thus far, reflect on things a bit. So that'll be good. Kind of easing into it a bit and sandwiching it between, the other pursuits that you have for the photography and teaching and everything else along those lines.
Exactly. Yeah. So right now, leading up to my Yellowstone trip, pretty much this week and next week, I am trying to get done as much as I possibly can. I have 4 different articles that I want to write and get through because of various obligations. I owe one to on landscape that is due next Thursday. I owe one to Dodge and Burn. I have to start ramping that up again because it was a unforeseen, unplanned for 2-month absence because of pretty much everything that we had talked about in the last episode, or one of the last episodes. And then I want to start writing on my own blog again. But one of the other things that I've been working towards is kind of going back to printing, is messing around with the Canon Pro 1000. And
So is it all repaired and up and running and everything?
Yeah. So I received the replacement model from Canon, the warranty replacement. I want to say maybe 3 weeks ago.
So they just sent you a whole new printer?
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. Yeah. Did it include inks?
It did. Yes.
Oh,
so it made for one hell of a deal. I'll tell you that. And so I was running some test prints, and most of the time when my paper of choice, up until recently, I might be making a change, but it has always been the Hahnemühle Photo Rag 308, which is a matte photo paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And never had any issues with it. But for some reason, I went and I was doing test prints of various images that I had previously printed on the Pro 100. And they came out very flat. And I wasn't sure exactly what was going on with it. But I compared it to the Pro 100 print. And it looked like a totally different image. Because it just lacked that, I guess, luminosity is what I would consider it. It lacked that punch that I wanted. And so I took I think this was yesterday afternoon or 2 days prior at some point. I started messing around with it and finally was able to figure it out. I had some of my settings that I needed to change around and apply on the printer side of things versus Photoshop or Lightroom, mainly like the ICC profiles and...
Okay, so it's a profile thing.
Right, yeah. Which it was weird because I had been applying them through Photoshop, but for some reason the printer wasn't picking them up. Not sure exactly what the technical side of that, what was happening there, but regardless, it's all good now. But
nice.
I'm currently thinking about switching my paper, and I have these 5x7 inch papers that are from Red River, and it's their Palo Duro etching 315 paper, which is again a matte paper, a little bit more of a textured finish. And
that's also what I was thinking. It's got to have a bit more of a texture to it based on the name.
Yep, it has a little bit of a texture to it. And it also has a little bit of more warmth to it, which I like for my black and white images. And perhaps the nicest thing of all with this is that despite its quality being quite similar, as far as I can tell, and it printing quite nicely, it's much cheaper. Which,
well, that's good.
Yeah, definitely. So it's actually like considerably cheaper, which it's maybe $80 for a box of 25 sheets of 17 by 22 inch paper. It's about $60 to $80 cheaper than what the Hahnemühle version is for PhotoRec.
That doesn't surprise me because Hahnemühle is pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Like if you're just printing for yourself, Hahnemühle is a little bit of a tough one. If you're selling stuff, then no big deal. But yeah, because it gets expensive really fast. Even like, I buy paper by the rule, but I also buy some 8.5 by 11 sheets of the Hahnemühle stuff just so I can do test prints and stuff. Yep. And I'm always surprised every time I go to order more paper. I'm like, how much is this stuff?
Yeah.
So yes, I can relate in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always buying the 8.5 by 11 inch sized papers for these prints that I do at home. And yeah, $50 a box for it regularly is not exactly the most friendly thing to the wallet. But one thing that Red River offers that Hahnemühle doesn't is they offer true sized paper. So by that, I mean, you can get 8 by 10 inch sheets of paper instead of 8.5 by 11.
Well, that's convenient. That's really good.
So you can get 8 by 10 inch, you can get 11 by 14 and 16 by 20, which are the three sizes that I offer for prints.
Yeah.
And it kind of harkens back to darkroom printing, where that was the, like when you bought a silver gelatin print, and even today, if you buy a silver gelatin print, and it says that it's a 16 by 20 inch print, that's based on not the image size, but that's based on the paper size that you're buying it.
Yeah, it's going to have the board around it as it's kind of held into the whatever, paper holder and all that, right, when they're making the darkroom print.
So you're not actually getting, you may buy a 16 by 20 inch image or print, but the image size on that is maybe, I don't know, 15 by 19 or 14 by 18, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of wondering whether I want to follow suit with something like that, and actually getting true sized papers, as I'll call them, or if I want to continue with like 8.5 by 11 for the 8 by 10 inch, 13 by 19 for the 11 by 14, and 17 by 22 for the 16 by 20.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tricky one because you got to think about it from if a person buys a print and they're going to frame it, having an image where the actual image size is the size of the, typical opening size for most of the mats. Mm-hmm. It does make the process easier. I do see it like for the 16 by 20 print that I mentioned earlier, the image is exactly, 16 by 20, and then there's the white area around it. I would think that that's more so what people would expect these days. Though I do get the question from the time, like, is that the paper size? Is that the image size? But I think just from the standpoint of if one is framing it. Mm-hmm. Now, if it's used for something else, then, then it'll be a different situation. Though I will say that the 8.5 by 11, it's an awkward size paper when it comes to photography.
Yeah.
So if I was selling an 8 by 10 print, I guess I would just trim it down so at least it's even on all sides. But I'd almost be tempted to have, a larger paper size than the 8.5 by 11 and give a little bit more of a generous border around it, just to make it a little easier for framing.
Yeah. I mean, how much border do you typically include in your images or in your prints?
So for the 16 by 20, I have it printed on 24-inch roll paper.
Okay.
So there's 2 inches on either side, and then the top and bottom are slightly larger than 2 inches, just because the printer naturally gives a little bit extra there, just the way that it works. And it's close enough where I don't trim off the additional 1/2 inch or so off the top. But for the print portfolios, I have it where the paper size is 8 by 10. The image is 7.2 inches by 9.2 inches. I just found that gives a aesthetically pleasing white border size around it. But if I'm doing different sizes, if it's a larger print, I try to give at least a couple inches or so, because I figure the mat's going to be bigger than that. It just makes it a little easier from the framer's perspective to have a little more something to work with.
Right.
So, and they can always trim off a little bit if needed.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just something for me to think about since I saw that Red River offers it. And like I said, I've been playing around with that 5x7 paper that I quite like the look that it's giving me for it.
Yeah. I guess there's also the aspect of it being a bit less waste, which is nice. Because, if you're buying letter size paper and you're always trimming off a little bit of it anyways and just throwing it away, I would certainly, I'd cry more about it if it's Hahnemühle, because that little scrap of paper is like that. I paid 50 cents for that scrap of paper,
exactly.
And here I am just throwing it away. So in some cases, that would be good. Like for doing the print portfolios, since I've always used Hahnemühle, even before I did the roll paper, I was using just a letter size sheets, and I would just feed them through the printer that would print those as a smaller printer. And I'd have to go through and trim every single one of them. And it would certainly be nice when I was doing that to have just 8 by 10 paper. It would just save a lot of time and save a lot of waste. But now, certainly by doing the roll paper, I get that true 8 by 10 inch. I just have to, trim the images down from the big roll of paper, but I have hardly any waste at all, which is nice.
Yeah.
But it's good that they offer those sizes. That's a bit unusual, even though it really shouldn't be, because that's the way it has been for the longest time.
Yeah, it's weird that more companies don't offer those, but I don't know. Like you said, I think it's just a matter of, because we're able to print at virtually any size at this point, and the standard mat sizes are like 8 by 10 and true to image size. They just kind of went around with what the framing market was doing as well. But I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, something to think about and continue to rack my brain about and overthink, as always.
Yeah. You had mentioned earlier about, getting back into the writing and everything. And a couple of months back, or whenever it was, when I was invited to be a judge for the Natural Landscape Photography Awards, I was asked if I would be willing to also contribute an article to the book that they produce after, with all the awards winners and all the entries and stuff in there and stuff. And in the past, like I know that like you've wanted me to you've inquired about me writing an article and some stuff like that. And I just, man, it's tough for me. It really is tough for me. But in this particular situation, I'm like, okay, I'll do this article for the book. It's going to be a lot of pressure, but I think I have some better strategies now at play. And so yesterday I grabbed a pad of paper. It's been really hot here. So I mean, it's over 100 degrees today. Yesterday was a little cooler, but it was still in the high 90s. So it was very, very hot. And because I am a extremely well-respected, extremely financially wealthy landscape photographer, I have a blow-up kiddie pool in the backyard.
Oh, look at you, Mr. Fancy Pants.
I know, right? And so I'm like, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to grab my pad of paper. I'm going to float around on my pool float out there in my barely large enough inflatable kiddie pool that can just barely fit this pool float in there. And I'm just going to grab the pad of paper, and I'm just going to do just kind of stream of consciousness, just write out everything I have in mind, because I know that seeing that blinking cursor, as we've talked about in the past, seeing that blinking cursor just staring back at me and judging me, is not going to be good for figuring out how I'm going to do this article. And I actually found the process of just having that pad of paper, I just started writing, and it was actually fairly coherent, pretty well organized. The theme of the article is essentially the benefits of returning to locations and some examples, some things I've learned along the way. And also based on our conversations here and realizing the importance of being in the present tense in the writing. I'm beginning the article with a description of being down in the canyons of where I go backpacking, and just the sights, the sounds, everything going on around me. The process of, exposing a sheet of film on a particular subject, then talking about how, this is my third time in that canyon. I didn't even notice that subject the first time. I tried again last year. It didn't work out so well. Here I am again. And then using that as a vehicle to talk about the many things I've learned through the years when it comes to returning to subjects and how that has benefited me as a photographer. But just simply having that pad of paper out and just getting those thoughts out, and then eventually, coming back inside, just leaving just this trail of sloppy, wet footprints all the way through the house. And then just sitting down and, starting to type that in, it really did help. And I don't know that I would have thought of starting with something handwritten first, but I'm about maybe about a third, maybe almost halfway through the article, but it's going pretty smoothly.
Nice.
So
nice.
It just shows how there are those tools out there, techniques out there that are beneficial for the process, and about sometimes just getting something out on paper first is really important part of the process.
So what you're saying is that I can expect an article from you for the winter 2024 issue of the magazine?
I think I'm burnt out now.
What a shame.
Got my hand, there's blisters, it's cramping up on me.
Okay. So
lost a fingernail.
So you can only do it for books. You can't do it for magazines.
Only for books. I'm very hoity-toity in that sense.
Yes. I see that. Just like you had your maid clean up your wet footprints throughout the house. I know. I get it.
Yes. Yes. Extremely wealthy. Yes. So just,
I've found, I tend to think a lot about a specific subject before I even try to write it. But I think I get to a point where I overthink it, and I really should start doing more stream of consciousness writing. Because right now, so I have these four or five articles, something like that. I have a couple articles that are somewhat outlined. I started just to write down like a potential title for them, just to get an idea of what I want to write about, along with a sentence or two for the main idea, and then points that I want to touch on. And I also included additional resources like books that I wanted to take quotes and such from. And I'm hoping that at least helps to get my mind and get the wheels turning a little bit before I can start writing. But I do just need to bite the bullet, sit down, like put in my AirPods or something to get rid of any kind of distraction, auditory distraction, and just write until I have nothing more to write about that potential specific topic, thinking about it.
And that's also like once I got to the computer and, I had all these scribbled down notes, I just threw on some headphones, just some noise canceling headphones, and just wasn't listening to anything, just had the noise canceling going. And that was just enough just to calm my mind, where it kept me in that process. Very similar mindset to when I was writing it. So I find that if I need to concentrate, the headphones are definitely important for that. But the other thing too is like if I was sitting there writing this on the computer, and if I start typing things out, and if this is, not using the notepad first, it's just, writing it on the computer, if it starts going in a different direction that I want, hitting delete or, whatever Command Z and just, undoing that sentence or whatever, it's not as satisfying as grabbing a pen and just scratching out what I wrote, drawing a little arrow and then starting again, further down. There's something very satisfying about scratching out. I'm like, nope, that's not the way I want to go, but still having all that stuff there on the paper was also more conducive for getting the thoughts out, avoiding those detours I didn't want to go on, just realizing, nope, this was a mistake. Don't want to do that. And because you're still left with something on that pad of paper, as opposed to when you delete something as you're writing on the screen, you delete it and all of a sudden you're just back to staring at that blinking cursor of judgment again. So I don't know. Maybe the process of handwritten stuff could be useful for other aspects as well, but definitely very good from a writing standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you mentioned the distractions, like I don't want to go off onto that tangent kind of thing, because that it reminds me of Tim Carpenter's book, To Photograph is to Learn How to Die, which I had read while I was in North Carolina, which I don't recall if I mentioned it here before, but it's split up into 3 different sections, kind of, in a sense. But it's not sections in a traditional sense. It's sections on each individual page. So you have the black text that follows the main ideas that he wanted to convey. And then you have red text that is occasionally supplementing that black text. It's quotes and such, digressions that he wanted to include. And then there's a light blue text as well. And those are the footnotes. And those are the true digressions that he just went off into little rants or smaller essays on a specific topic. Truly, it's an essay, as he describes it, with digressions. And I think that's a fascinating way of writing, especially about especially in a long form sense, especially if you're really diving deep into a specific topic. It's something that I specifically got this journal for writing my long form essay on death and my thoughts on death and how it relates to photography and my photography itself. And in this journal, it's an academic journal. So it has on the left-hand side a column where typically you would use that for like helpful reminders or code or whatever to remember what the lecture was about or what the main notes are about. And then it has a column on the bottom across a horizontal column on the bottom that is for like summary typically. But I figured I can have my main writing in this usual column and then use those extra 2 columns, the smaller ones, for digressions. Just because I kind of wonder too, like anytime that our mind starts to wander, how beneficial are those wanderings? And sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's like, oh, I could really go for a chicken sandwich right now.
But certainly sometimes it leads somewhere that you didn't necessarily anticipate.
Exactly.
Even in the moment, you look back and like, oh man, I was onto something there, but I didn't realize I was onto something there.
And so even if you are like, I know some people when they are trying to write an article or anything on the computer, they'll keep a little notepad aside of them as well, a pen and a notepad. And anytime that their mind starts to wander, instead of looking up a recipe for a chicken sandwich, they write down on their notepad, recipe for chicken sandwich. That way it it puts that off. It satiates that desire to look up that terminology, that whatever, to feed into that distraction. And instead you're able to get it out of your mind and focus more on the task. And then you can go back to those notes and be like, do I really need a recipe for that? No, I can just make one, Yeah.
And that reminds me a little bit of, when people would have like a notepad, maybe they have some profound thought in the middle of the night that gets them up. So like, oh, I got to write this down. You get up in the morning, you're like, who wrote this? What is this? I don't understand this. What is this? So you also kind of wonder if, like, going back to is like, I have no clue what this was, but it made sense at the time.
There's actually a book that I read that's it's by E.M. Chorin, and it is The Trouble with Being Born, and it's a book of aphorisms essentially, and that was something that was a little contentious, on his part, that not everybody agreed with, like, to write philosophy in an aphorismic way. But regardless, a lot of his, he struggled with insomnia, and that's how books of his came to be, were these aphorisms in the middle of the night that he that he woke up and wrote in a notepad, and then came back to him and was like, oh, that's actually a decent idea. But I'm sure there were plenty of others that were like, what, like, why?
Yeah, you do kind of wonder about that. I mean, and perhaps it's one of those things where, it means one thing to you in that moment, you go back to it. Maybe it even triggers something else. Maybe it sends you down some other path you wouldn't have even anticipated. So I do see the value of that.
I've got one story, and then we'll go on to our photographer of the week.
All right.
So last week we were supposed to record, and we didn't.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So,
so I need to know the full story. I know that it's regarding a puppy type incident.
Yeah, that's it was definitely a test of patience. It was not a successful test. So, long story short, I had both Emmie and Lucy outside to go to the bathroom. Emmie, anytime that I bring her out, is on a leash because she doesn't have a recall very well, and she likes to go and explore. That's very important to keep in mind right now. So whenever we go to let them inside, we have them sit by the door. I'll take her collar or her leash off, and then I open the door, they wait, and then I say okay to release them to come inside. And it's just a practice that we've done since we got them. So I have Emmie go through that. The second that I go to undo her leash, she says, "See ya," and is gone. Because Lucy didn't want to come inside, which is fine, whatever. But I should have dealt with Lucy first in hindsight and made sure that Lucy was either with her or inside first before letting Emmie off her leash. Because Emmie saw that Lucy was free, and Lucy was sniffing at like something on the porch a few feet behind her. And Emmie was like, I'm going to go explore now because I don't want to go inside. So Emmie runs off. Lucy's running off right behind her. They're exploring around on the property, which usually it's annoying, but it tends to be okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get Emmie specifically back. And I know that if I can get Lucy back, I can get Emmie back. So I'm trying to figure everything out, or vice versa. Yeah. So I'm walking down the driveway, and how the house is situated, I've said before, but it is a very long driveway on a hill. And to the left of the driveway, as you're walking away from the house, is a strip of field that has like gas lines in it. So we don't really use it, but it's there, and they like to explore over that way. So they're sniffing around at God knows what, and I'm trying to walk down further away from them so that way I can start pushing them up towards the house instead of chasing them away from the house, you know? Because if it's going to become any kind of like game of keep away, I want it to be away from the road. Exactly, yeah. Well, doesn't a white car start to drive by, and the driver has his arm out the window, and Emmie notices and says, "Ooh, person," and she takes off. She starts taking off after this car. Lucy is running right behind her, a few feet behind her, and I am like in shock because I'm like, luckily we don't live on a very busy road. Like, this is the only car that I had seen during this interaction during this time.
Yeah,
but our road connects to a busier road that's right around like a semi-blind corner that people go way too fast on naturally.
Yeah,
I start running barefoot on the macadam. This is at like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever it was. So I'm burning my feet up and getting rocks embedded in my soles in my feet.
Yeah. So everything that can go wrong so far is going wrong.
Yeah. So luckily, Lucy, for one reason or another, stopped at the next driveway over. So I went and I was able to get her, and I'm like, I can't. I know that if I don't get Lucy, there's no way that I'm getting Emmie. And I have no idea where Emmie is right now. Like, as I saw that the car stopped at the stop sign up the road, but I don't see her like chasing up to it or anything. So my immediate thought is that she had to have gone off either down the hill to the right, where a newer house had come in and they have chickens, and she's visiting the chickens for God knows how many times. She's done that already.
Just contemplating a chicken sandwich.
Exactly. Yes. There we go.
Yeah.
Or she is going up the other driveway to my other neighbor. But regardless, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get Lucy inside, and then I can go and start looking for Emmie. And the whole time I am scared, but also really, really pissed. Like, I'm at the point where I just, like, I don't care. And that's a terrible way to feel too, especially about like your best friend, especially about a dog like that. But it's just one of those things. I'm just so pissed off that I'm just like, whatever. I just need to focus on what I can control right now as much as I can, and that is getting Lucy in the house. So, needless to say, I go up the driveway with Lucy, get Lucy inside. I throw my shoes on, and I get Emmie's leash again, and leave Lucy inside. I go back around the house toward the driveway, and isn't the little shit just sitting there waiting for me? I'm like, I have no idea where she had gone. I have no idea why she even came back. I mean, obviously, I'm glad that she did, but she's just...
Maybe she saw you walking back with Lucy or something like that.
She would probably recognize that Lucy was no longer near or around her and was like, well, it's no fun if I can't have a friend to do this with. Yeah. So she's just like laying there, looking up at me like, hi, Dad. And another 15, 20 minutes go by, and I still can't get her back to me. Like, regardless. I'm like,
just keep away.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a game.
It's 100%. It's a game. And that's when I like emailed you. I'm like, I can't do this tonight. Because I knew that I was not in the right headspace. I was so irritated. And it would not have been a very like conducive thing. It wouldn't have been right or fair to anyone involved to do that. And it took my mom and sister, because they had gone out to run some errands. So they came driving up the driveway. And at that point, I was just sitting on the back of my car, just watching her, but not even attempting to get her. And my mom and sister come up the driveway. My sister ends up getting her. I'm like, I don't even want to like see her. Like, I'm like, you have fun with that. Like, I'm going inside. Leave me alone. Like, I need to cool off from all of this. So that was my Thursday adventure from last week. That was just rough.
Well, at least you got her back.
Yeah.
I certainly don't have issues with with Oliver getting like with that sort of situation with our backyard stuff, because my backyard's like 10 feet by 10 feet, so he's not going far. There have been some times when we'll take him to the dog park, and there's some other new dog there that he just gets infatuated with. And Oliver's really good on recall. You call his name, he comes flying towards you, usually demanding a treat of some sort. But he's really good about that. But there's been a couple times when I had to get someone else was able to kind of grab him, because he would just do the keep away thing with me. So I had to pick him up and just kind of put him over my shoulder. He's kind of like his little paws up in the air, just being carried away against his will. So yes, they can be frustrating at times.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm glad you're able to at least get her back in. She didn't go on too far of a little exploration there.
Like I said, the nicest thing was the fact that like, and I don't know if that made it worse, like, but the fact that she was just sitting there waiting for me, like, that I'm very happy that she did come back on her own, like willingly. wherever she had gone off to. But at the same time, I'm like, that just kind of twists the knife a little bit more. Like, I'm going to run away from you, but I'm going to keep coming back. You know, it's like, I don't know. Regardless, especially when it comes to recall, there's so much more work to do with her. And part of the issue is that my fiance and I aren't putting in as much work as we should with it. But it's also hard.
Because it does take a lot of work.
Yeah, it's also hard because we have our own lives and to try and figure out jobs and all that kind of thing that we're trying to juggle at the same time. So that's the difficult aspect, and just trying to deal with that. It's just life. But yeah. So there you go. Fun story.
Yeah. So do we have a artist for the week this week?
Yes. So I sent you the link to Instagram in the chat.
Yes. Looking at it right now. Krister Berg.
Yep. So our photographer.
See some beautiful black and white work there.
That's really why I chose their work. I don't recall exactly how I stumbled upon it or upon their page, but regardless, beautiful black and white photography. That's just very captivating. And again, going along with my favored theme of the intimate side, a lot of woodland photography here, a lot of intimate forest details that are really nice.
Yeah, all kinds of shapes, textures, big emphasis on simplicity, which certainly works very, very well for black and white. And just as I've said with a lot of the other featured artists in the past, is highly consistent work.
Yes,
which is great to see. Like it's all cohesive and would lend itself very well for presentation in a book. Just really, really fantastic work.
There are two photographs in particular here that really caught my eye. Three, actually. The first photograph in the middle, if you're looking at their Instagram, August 22nd, which is a bunch of puddles in what seems to be a rock bed. With reflected trees, and just I don't know. I like it.
Yeah,
my brain is too fried to come up with logical explanations of why I enjoy it, but it's just a unique way of depicting a forest scene within another scene itself, within another composition, and I just quite like that way of seeing. That's a little bit different than what may be considered traditional.
Yeah. There's also one with the feathers.
That was another one of mine.
Third row on the far right, and they're just really beautiful. And actually, I'm on his website here, and because I was curious, because I'm not familiar with the name Krister, but it is a he. Because I wasn't sure.
That's how I was too. That's why I kept saying going neutral, because I'm like, I'm not 100% sure, but yes, he.
But that picture with the feathers, there's some really dynamic motion there. The contrast between the dark tones and then the very light feathery details, but then the dynamic motion with all the diagonals. There's pretty much any of the photos there. They encourage you to spend time with them and just absorb them in a way that doesn't happen as much with color photography, where it's just like, it seems like with color photography, you just like, this is whatever it is. But for the black and white, it encourages you to linger on the picture, to figure out what it is that you're looking at. And there's this picture. Let's see. I don't know. It's many, many rows down. I'm not sure if it'll be within yours. It's a picture in the middle, just beneath a color photo with some grasses kind of in the snow. But it's a photo. It looks like maybe like a creek flowing with snow on either side of it and some ice formations on the top of it. Looks like it was posted on January 7th. But it's interesting because you look at it at first, it looks like the trunk of a tree, and then you realize that it's the opposite of what you think. The white snow is not the background. It's white snow, and then you have the dark form of the flowing water and the ice formations. So yeah, some really, really fantastic work.
Yeah, there's one more that's I think it's the fourth one down on the left-hand side, posted July 31st. It's right before the feather photograph. And it's of trash, of a sense. With the fern, the large fern in the foreground. Yeah. And these are some of my favorite photographs anymore. And this is something that I plan on writing about for, I think this one's going to be for On Landscape. But the idea of labels is especially heavy in my mind right now. And how we label ourselves as not only as individuals, but as artists, and whether we take on the role of a landscape photographer or nature photographer versus a general artist, etc. Because, at least for me, there's something so fascinating about this dichotomy of man and nature. And it's not represented very heavily, at least in the communities that you and I run in, of like Nature Photographers Network, or the like LPW, the Discord groups and such. Yeah. The only photographer that I know of that is running in those groups that is doing this kind of work as well is Chuck Kimmerly, where it's very obvious that he's doing it. But I don't know. It's just something about seeing that is just really, really beautiful. It's really nicely done.
Yeah, when you see the photos of it, man-made along with nature, it certainly lends itself to story, because you immediately question, what is this that was left behind? Why was it left behind? How is nature dealing with that? So there's so many questions when you see something like that. So that's very interesting.
So there you go. Photographer of the Week, Christer Berg. I will have the links in the show notes for you to check out his Instagram, his website, whichever you prefer, though it should be website.
And his website is christerberg.com. It's KRISTERBERG.com. And then his name is his username on Instagram, Christer Berg. So yeah, a very, very excellent choice.
The only disappointing part is that he does have a gallery of color images. It's just
couple clicks of the mouse away from perfection. Just have it just be nothing but black and white. And
so close. But what's interesting though, hold on. So I'm trying to click on the gallery, but it's not linked properly, and there's no way of getting to it. So maybe he just saved himself by having a broken gallery. No, never mind. I got it. Still beautiful.
I went to the. Wait a minute. So I see his color gallery, right? The picture of the mountain stream. I click on it. I see
by the water or whatever.
By the waters, and there's a black and white image.
Right. You have to click on the the underlined name color. The image is incorrectly linked.
Oh, I see. Got it.
Yeah. So the fourth image, if you click through on the slideshow that he has, though, it's an image of leaves stuck in ice. That is a very nice photograph, even though it is in color.
Yeah, it is. It has a very natural presentation. There's just a little bit of green underneath, which I think adds to the sense of story a bit. But yeah, that's certainly a good one. That's one where colors can certainly go wild at times. But it looks like that was probably taken on, very overcast, gloomy sort of day. So it's going to be a very limited range of color, regardless.
Yeah.
But that definitely translates very well. And a lot of the other color work has the bold contrast of black and white, but without the bold colors.
Yeah.
So you can see how it was color work from the perspective of a person who has a very good eye for black and white and all the rich contrast of that, but not wanting the color to be too intense. So it is quite good in that sense.
It seems like he started with color because like the actual URL is older-work-color.
Okay.
So it seems like he started in color and then went to black and white, perhaps because of recognizing his eye was more attuned to the textures.
That would make sense.
Everything.
Yeah.
Because a lot of his, as you're clicking through these, you get to a certain point where you can really see that he's going for a higher contrast look, or at least was at one point, where the colors start to get a little bit too saturated for realism, but would look good if it was converted to black and white because of how the tonality will shift. But interesting.
Yeah, that's a fascinating observation. I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com, and you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.